Leeds, Leeds, Leeds. What is happening? Welcome to Working Hours, an oral history podcast about a place called Leeds, a time called now, and an activity called work. Working Hours wants to record 1,000 loiners over the course of this, the most important decade in the history of the human species, and ask them about what they do all day and hear how they feel about it. My name is Simon, and this is all my fault. My mission here is to try to map out what my city, Leeds, a city that has declared a climate emergency, did during humanity's biggest emergency. On Working Hours, we hear how loiners have, are, and will be coping with our multiple and expanding crises during their day-to-day working hours. Can we turn things around? We'll find out. To tell this story, I need loiners like you, dear listener. I need people in Leeds or people from Leeds to come on this podcast and just tell me what they do all day and let me record how this affects us. Thank you for listening. What did you want to be when you grew up?
It's a funny question, really. So when I was quite young, when I was going through school and stuff like that, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I didn't know what I would do at all. I think as I got a little bit older, sort of like the end of secondary school, I started to think I want to join the army. Mainly, I think I probably saw it as just the opportunity to get out there and see things, you know what I mean, more than actually being in the army itself. I think, but yeah, that sort of thing, like being in the army, travel, that sort of thing, that's what I really wanted to do. But as life catches up with you, I suppose, as you go to college and things like that, you get drawn in other directions. And then when I did leave college, I didn't really. Again, I kind of put a line through it. I changed my mind basically, and I didn't want to do that. And then for in the middle of that, I didn't really want to do anything. I didn't know. I worked in a pub for about 3 years. Worked in a Wetherspoons. So I did that from like being 18 after I left college. So yeah, that's where I was then.
So it was a kind of, you weren't quite sure, and you just sort of seeing what everybody else was doing.
Yeah. I didn't really, when I was going through school, I didn't have a clue. That whole sort of environment isn't really for me anyway, I suppose. It's quite funny considering the position that I've got now, which I'm sure we'll go into later. But the whole classroom environment, that sort of thing, it was never really for me. And I think that sort of learning was never really for me. So I think that when it came to people asking about what I wanted to do, I had no idea, because all I had known was a classroom, you know what I mean, and what you did in the classroom, that sort of thing, and that wasn't for me, and I didn't learn very much in that way. So that were probably some of the reason why I had no idea what I wanted to do.
I remember when I was finishing high school and just sort of considering, you know, like I've spent 10 years, you know, you're like 16 at the time. I spent 10 years of my life in education, the majority of my life, and most of the stuff that I can actually remember. And you're kind of like, there's got to be more than this. You want to do something else. Like
100%. Yeah, that's what I like. I mean, I think when I did actually leave school, I didn't leave with the best grades, anything like that, understandable. So when I went on to college, I didn't do any A levels because I had to resit my GCSEs because I did so bad in my GCSEs. So I did that. I resat my GCSEs. Then I went off to a different college to do public services. So I still had sort of the army mentality, like still want to join the army at that point. And then that was a year course, and I kind of finished that, and I'm like, I don't want to do that. So, and then I got literally just after I finished college, I think I was on job seekers for about 2 weeks, and then I got a job in a Wetherspoons and progressed from there. But even then, when I worked at the Wetherspoons, I knew that wasn't really what I wanted to do. You know what I mean? I was just kind of I was young, I was 18, you know what I mean?
It's just money in your pocket.
Yeah, exactly. It's a pint on a night, you know what I mean? A pint when you finish work at the bar there, you know what I mean? Obviously. So met lots of good people, lots of good friends, you know what I mean? That sort of thing. So very much of the job was very much the social aspect of it. I did progress to team leader there. And I did have the opportunity to start training for the manager, that sort of thing. And I did start a little bit, but it got to the point where I knew it wasn't for me. To be honest, I couldn't be doing with the getting in at silly o'clock in the morning. You know what I mean? Going. Sometimes I won't start work until 10 o'clock at night, and then I won't get home till 4, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. You know what I mean? And I get paid more doing a night shift in a warehouse, you know, for that same hours. You know what I mean? And I saw the stress that the management were under, and I thought, I don't want that. I don't want that. But it's not for me, that. And then from there, I actually got a job in a care home, completely opposite side of the spectrum, in a I was a support worker for learning difficulties and mental illness, which, again, it were great while I was there. I love that job. I was there for about 3 years, and again, I progressed up to senior in that. Our majority of COVID, I was in there as well, the senior, and I think it was probably the COVID that sort of pulled me away from that sort of work. It was very, very hard. You know what I mean? Obviously, people, the service users I'm with, they can't go out, they can't do the things that they want to do. They're anxious, you know what I mean? As well as staff anxiety, staff sickness, you know what I mean? All that sort of thing. Staff going off left, right, and centre because they've got COVID, and people in the house have got COVID as well, which is just making things worse. You know what I mean? So I think it was kind of, and again, through COVID, I was covering a lot of staff, covering a lot of shifts. Again, it was just long hours, a lot of hours, still shift work, stuff like that. And where it kind of, again, that's where it kind of hit a bit of a rock bottom for me. When I got to senior, like, well, what's after senior? And it was a deputy manager position. And again, I looked at the kind of stress that they were under and what they were doing. And for how much money they were getting paid. Like, there was advertisements out while I was there, so I kind of knew the rough estimate of the wage. I don't want to do that for that money, you know what I mean? It's a lot, especially in that sort of, I mean, what I do now is a lot of responsibility, but in a different way. Caring for vulnerable people like that in a residential home, administering medication, you know what I mean? That sort of stuff. It's a lot of pressure not to mess up, you know what I mean? And ultimately, eventually, mistakes happen anyway in those cases. But I couldn't see a future where I was going to be the best manager. If I were already losing heart in it at the senior level, I didn't want to go to manager just for the sake of going to manager. You know what I mean? When you not when you're working with vulnerable people and things like that, it's not really worth it.
I mean, it shows consideration as well. I mean, the fact that you're thinking about it like that, it's not just kind of like, oh, I don't want the responsibility. It's also sort of, will I be able to have that responsibility? Do I have the passion to keep doing this at that level with that amount of stress and responsibility and so on?
100%. I think, like I say, from the service user side of it, it was brilliant. I absolutely loved working with the guys that I worked with. And the majority of the staff as well were brilliant. It's when, like I say, you cross over into COVID and then things start becoming a lot more difficult. Just in general, just day to day, you know, I mean, a lot more behaviours because of the service users, so more outbursts from the service users because they're frustrated as well. They can't go do the things that they like doing, and that rubs off on staff, you know what I mean? And that annoys staff, that makes staff anxious, that makes staff not look forward to come to work. The same way as before, because they don't know what that day is going to bring. They don't know how short staffed they're going to be, that sort of thing, you know what I mean? And that makes it a lot. And I think trying to manage that as a senior support worker was really difficult. Never mind trying to manage it as a manager, you know what I mean? As a manager of a home, when you've got a lot more responsibility under your belt.
And so many things to do.
100%, 100%.
You're listening to Series 4, Episode 24, and to my guest, George Richardson. This is another Zoom interview recorded on the 5th of July, 2023. Hello. Been a while. Apologies. So, quick updates. Firstly, get in touch with me now to book your interviews for 2024. Remember, you get to listen back to your interviews before I make up your episode, so I can take out anything you perhaps shouldn't have said. It's fun, it's therapeutic, and it's a great way to get low-stakes media practice and a free piece of social media marketing content for yourself. You can advertise your skills, your company, or your business and let people hear your work story. It's going to be absolutely insane next year, so I want to be speaking to as many people as I can through it all. I want to record 3 times a week, ideally. I want to smash 100 episodes out by August. So help me with that. The only way that I can do this is if you help. I really need to reach people who aren't listening to podcasts. And I also need to keep growing my listenership for this show. It would still be good to build a decent-sized Leeds audience that can help me to sustain this project financially, emotionally, and logistically. However, I am fully prepared to go it mostly alone. Obviously, I need guests, as I have said before. But I'm not going to refuse any help now either. Everyone needs a friend or two on a long journey. It was a battle to get 100 episodes, and finding the resources for the project this year continues to be a struggle. I haven't just been hiding lately. I've been knackered, still, and stressed, and had no time, and been real uptight. Me, I know. Really surprising, huh? Who'd have thunk it? Come on the show. Tell people to come on the show. Tell people about the show. Tell me how to get more people on the show. Help fund the show and fund getting people on the show and making the show better and help it to happen faster and give me more motivation and opportunities to make more of them. Again, sorry this has taken ages, but I've been trying to make a little war chest to make a few more of these. So sorry for not having the time and energy to get these final few episodes of the very few overall episodes I've been able to get done this year out to you. It's very disappointing. The interviews have all been great, but I'm supposed to be going for quantity, not quality. Not that I mind having quality. So please, next year, do what you can to get people to come on the show. Not just to advertise their business, but because it might do them good, especially if they've just made or are just considering a change in their work. Got a friend that's done nothing but moan about their work for years, saying they'll quit and they never do? Sure you do. Get them on this. What are they playing at? Why are they scared to jump? Or how do we make their job good again? Let's find out. They'll feel better after the interview. Even if they don't change their mind, they might like their job again. For a bit. Anyway, everyone in Leeds, come on this podcast next year. George Richardson is an outreach and engagement practitioner for the charity GamCare. George's role is to reach out to different support services and talk to members of the public to raise the profile of gambling-related harms and the support GamCare can offer. George also works with the criminal justice system, mainly within 2 prisons in Leeds, delivering training to staff members and supporting prisoners who have been identified as having an issue with gambling. Right, let's do this. Episode 104 of Working Hours with George Richardson. So we'll probably revisit COVID
Yeah, of course.
as we go in later. But
Yeah, of course.
Jump into what you're doing now. So what is it that you're
doing?
Yeah,
so what I do now, so I'm an outreach and engagement practitioner. I keep wanting to say the wrong one, so my job title's recently changed. I'm an outreach engagement practitioner. So basically my role is to reach out to different services in Leeds, whether that's, for example, the drug and alcohol service, different housing services, that sort of thing, in community centres, stuff like that, and just try to raise awareness around gambling addiction, gambling harms. We have a training package that we deliver to these services, and again, trying to set up like referral pathways so they know how to refer into our service, as well as how to ask the right questions as well. And I suppose the other half, what I do is a lot of the criminal justice side of it as well. So I'm doing a lot of work in the 2 Leeds prisons, so HMP Wealdstone and HMP Leeds. Working with prisoners who have spoken about their issue around gambling, as well as training staff and stuff like that as well. To expand that a little bit further, basically they will refer straight out to me. I will go into them and assess them and stuff like that. I have a colleague who's going to be coming in with me. She's been picking up a lot of the treatment side of it, so a lot of the practitioner work, so more of the, I suppose you'll call it like the counselling side of it. It's not really counselling, but that sort of work. And then when they are due for release, we'll look to refer them onto the appropriate community service. So if they are going somewhere else in the country, if staying in Leeds or Yorkshire and Humber sort of area, they can stay with us. But then there will be, if they're going somewhere else in the country, there's always a local treatment service somewhere. So it's just referring them onto the most appropriate treatment service, which there's very we're kind of pioneering it sort of around here. So there's very, very few places in the country that have that sort of support and treatment for prisons. There's plenty out there for the community now. When people are in the community on the criminal justice side, there's very, very little support in prisons. That's like sort of face-to-face support. There is over the phone support and stuff like that I can get through the National Gambling Helpline, which is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But there's very little like face-to-face support there for gambling and gambling harms.
So at what point would you sort of come in on that then? Do you come in just as they're coming out for release, or would you?
No. So it's very much while they're in there. So a lot of the training that we've done with staff in there, again, it's about asking the right questions when they're doing their assessments. So for example, if they have an issue around substances as well, and they come forward, they've got an issue around substances, or say they're on a methadone script or something like that, or they're on some medication that because of drugs, or they need a detox, obviously they need to fill out that they need to be assessed by the drug and alcohol team in the prisons. I work closely with them, and then they ask the question. So our sort of screening question is, have you ever been affected by your own gambling or the gambling of a loved one? They'll ask a question similar to that, or that question, like exactly like that, hopefully. And then if they say, yeah, I've got an issue around gambling, or if they say partner's a gambler, you know what I mean, anything like that, we will they'll fill out a referral form and they'll send that straight to me. Obviously, while they are in there, it is limited to what we can do with them, because it's okay while they're in prison, them saying, I'm never going to gamble again. It's very easy for them to say that while they're there, while it's not so accessible as it is in the community. So the challenge really is to try keep talking to them, keep getting them ready for when they are coming out. And then when they are released or being well, then look at trying to keep them in support when they do come back to the community, because that's when the real challenge starts for them when they do come out. But yeah, the job in itself, I love. It's a very niche job, I suppose. I don't know of many services that do anything like what we do. There are some that might do some community engagement and stuff like that, do like awareness stalls, which we do. So there'll be some services that do stuff like that. But in terms of the training aspect of it, it's what I was saying earlier, while it's quite funny that I hate the classroom environment, but now I do. A lot of my job now is the training aspect, which I do really enjoy. So it's a bit of it's a bit strange, really.
I mean, do you deliver the training in a kind of classroom setup, or is it more of a small groups?
We try to do it face to face more now. Excuse me. We try to do it more face to face. It is sometimes in a classroom environment. We've got a presentation, stuff like that we've built. There's videos and presentation. I do try and base it as much as possible as more conversational, asking them questions. What are their experiences? How can we improve those experiences of asking the questions? Obviously, we do go through the things of like the types of gambling, the different gambling harms, how it affects different people, and things like that. It's a lot better trying to do it face to face now. I think on Teams it's very easy for people. I know personally. This is where as I know, we'll come back to COVID later, but as we've gone through COVID and everything was more remote. So sort of even like online training and stuff like that, when I'm receiving the training, I'm not a fan of it at all.
Yeah.
But at the same, and I'd much rather be in the classroom.
Yeah.
Receiving that training face to face, it helps keep me personally more engaged. But I suppose as well, that's because it's training that I like, you know what I mean? I'm probably more interested in that sort of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, and a lot of the time it's kind of, it's that bad experience of either it's boring and or it's painful, which is why people get, sort of put off long term. But then, because I worked for a good while at the TUC in their learning bit, and we dealt with a lot of people who had come back to education or back to learning later in life, and who had bad experiences in school and stuff, and then they were just not interested. And then they'd kind of got into something, started with one thing, learning that, and then just built from there, and ended up really, really enjoying sort of the education. It's that thing of like, it's not the information, it's the delivery, it's that sort of school system of you will learn this, and you're talking to a room of 30 people. It's very depersonalized, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. There's people fidgeting behind us, people messing about, it's very hard to concentrate. I'm not saying I was the best student, I wasn't, but kids, I don't, me personally, in general, I think it's a very unfair system, that the people are always going to thrive in that system. People are always going to thrive, and people are always going to get a lot out of it. But on the other end of the spectrum, the people that it's not for them at all, they are a lot more doers. They like to be out and about, happily sit on a computer and learn something on a computer, learn about, I don't know,
anything really.
Anything,
There's an interesting way in. I mean, the things that you watch, like I can give you a random example from a few years back. This thing that I was listening to, which was a history of filing cabinets, which just sounds like what. But it was fascinating. It was like, the development of it, and like as a technology, how that affected things, and how that changed the access to information and how we thought about information. And like, that's a stepping stone on the way to kind of databases and stuff.
Yeah, definitely. That's quite interesting. Never thought of it like that in my life.
But that's it. All these things start
coming out. It could be the most boring thing possible, but the internet and videos and animations and stuff like that can make it so fascinating.
Yeah. All right, well, there's tons and tons in that, so I'm sure we'll get into it as we go, but let's start off with how you got into this role then.
Quite funny, actually. So it kind of fell on my lap. So when I came out of the care sector, so care home, that sort of stuff, I went to a drug and alcohol service, a local one to me in Wakefield, and I was on the criminal justice team there. I worked with people coming out of prison. I did like their assessments and stuff like that. And again, I really enjoyed that job. Through that as well, like when I first sort of started there, so I think I started like it'd been early 2021 when I started there. And in like the months leading up to it, maybe a little bit into it as well, I started gambling on my phone. Nothing too heavy to start with. I was winning lots of money. It was great. Eventually I could see where it was going, you know what I mean? So I took a step back. I took a step back and I stopped. And then I looked back on it later, like, wow, I was going somewhere. I could see where that was going, you know what I mean? It was quite worrying where I was going. But yeah, I took a step back from that anyway. I carried on my role. And then I got a phone call or an email, I can't remember which, from they call them like an employment agency sort of thing, like, but like, it's not an agency, it's like
headhunted, essentially.
Yeah, headhunted, yeah. So they found my CV on Indeed, you know what I mean? They asked me to apply for this role. And I read it and I like, there were 3 roles. There were a lived experience lead. I didn't think I had enough experience for the lived experience lead, and I didn't. There was a criminal justice lead, and there was then it was the training and engagement lead. And I actually originally applied for the criminal justice lead position because that's where I thought it really fascinating and things like that. And I thought I'd carry a lot of things over from what I was doing. And then I didn't get it, but they asked me to re-interview for the training and engagement lead. And in the background of all this as well, so I was people that work in those sort of roles. Same with the care sector. It's a very, very low paying job. I was practically on minimum wage when I was at the drug and alcohol service. There was lots of bartering about the wage and stuff like that. And I knew I wanted to go for it. I wanted to carry on my life. You know what I mean? I wanted to start to drive, you know what I mean? There's certain things that I wanted to do, and I'm in rented accommodation. I'm really lucky. My landlady's great, but I'm still in rented accommodation. I want to start saving for a house, to buy a house, and those sort of things, you know what I mean? And I can't do that on minimum wage.
No.
So there were a lot there to have those discussions with the drug and alcohol service. And then when this fell on my lap, a lot more money, a lot more chance to progress through the wages sort of thing. I was all like, well, I don't know what it's gonna be like. I've never done anything like that before. I'd never done a professional facing job before.
Yeah.
My jobs previous, I worked on a bar, worked in a care room, worked with people coming out of prison. This is the position I'm doing now. A lot of it is professional facing different services, you know what I mean? A lot more that sort of role. I've never done that before, so I didn't know how I'd fare at all. But I started, and yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think it took a little bit of time to get into it because the work had been so stale through COVID, because there hadn't been as much training going on, not as much engagement. They weren't talking to as many services, you know what I mean, as we would like. And plus, there'd been no one employed for a good few months leading up to me as well. So a lot of the leads that they had gone stale.
Yeah.
But yeah, carried on with that started there September of 21. As I worked my way through, the lady who got the criminal justice lead job, she left. She wasn't there very long, and I kind of just slid into that role. Like I want to pick that up. And luckily, from my previous employment, I was able to. When I worked at drug and alcohol service, I had lots of connections already. I was talking to the prisons every day. You know what I mean? All that sort of stuff. I knew people in probation, bear in mind a different area, that sort of stuff. So I had lots of connections already, and it made it quite. It was quite easy then to sort of mirror. That was the real aim, is what I was doing now. So there were referral pathways and stuff like that set up for the drug and alcohol service, and I was really trying to mirror the sort of thing they have in a drug and alcohol service, because it's not there for gambling at all. There's no questions asked. If someone goes into prison, and like I was saying before, and they've got drug and alcohol issues, or if they've got severe mental health issues, or all of the above, they'll get picked up straight away, they get assessed right away, they get support and get treatment. Every person that I've spoken to who's a prisoner, who's in the prisoners, and has got an issue around gambling, not one of them has ever been offered any support through the criminal justice system for gambling. No one's ever been asked them the question before. So it shows the real gap in care and support in the system.
I don't think it's ever been seen as a real problem anyway. Like, I don't think it is. I think it's sort of like, oh, there are people with gambling problems or problem gamblers, but gambling itself overall is not problematic, you know, and that people being kind of prolific gamblers is not problematic.
Yeah.
I worked in a casino for a while.
Oh, really?
And you would see some people, and you would see people doing loads of money. And it's like, that's got to be hard to take that, you know, those sort of losses consistently. And it is that up and down. And a lot of the time you would see people, you know, like you said, with the phone and getting a big win. Often it's I don't know if, obviously you correct me because you've dealt with more people, but like anecdotally from my experience, it's like a big win can be the thing that sets it off, because you've had that win, you know it's possible, and then you go back and you just plow all that money that you've won back into the place.
Yeah, there's lots and lots of stories out there now about people who've had big wins, 30 grand, taking all the family to Disney World or something like that, paid some of the mortgage off, and then they've got 5 grand left. Then they've ended up in negative 30 grand because they've gambled away that 5 grand, and they want to try, and they've just kept going. They've ended up negative 30 grand just from that one big win. It's definitely something that can start it all off. If you have that early big win, it can definitely. I mean, when I were doing it myself, there was no like massive thousands of pounds win. It was lots of medium wins. So it was like 100 quid here, 100 quid there, 200 quid, 150, 50, stuff like that. And then when they started to dry up, and that, it was really strange. It was just when I started, and I was getting all these wins. The industry will say that that's not a thing. I don't know, but for me, and I know lots of other people have had a very similar experience, and I was winning lots, And then I started to lose. And then when I started to lose, I was putting more in because I was losing, and that's when I drew a line underneath it. That's when I could see something was happening. But I say I'm very lucky because I had the experience of drug and alcohol service and addiction in general. You know, I mean, mental
so you
health.
could see the red flags.
Yeah, exactly. I could see the red flags and I could see where it was going, and I was able to take a step back. Whereas a lot of people, if there's a lot of other things going on in the background, if you have got mental health issues, if you have got other financial issues, if
it's your only avenue of pleasure.
Yeah, exactly. If you're isolated, you know what I mean?
If that's where all your friends are, that's where your social network is.
Yeah, 100%. All that, it's a lot easier. I can see quite easily how people can get sucked into it, and how people can continue and will continue, and how it can become people's lives. But yeah, like I say, it's the same with the criminal justice aspect of it. Like in the prisons and things like that, it's not recognized as an issue, when in reality, gambling addiction can sometimes be a lot easier than drugs and alcohol, especially your more severe drugs like crack cocaine or heroin, things like that. Obviously, it's a lot easier to kick than them. So if you can get those in, you can get those stop gambling. It can give them a lot of recovery capital anyway. So it can get them thinking a lot more about their future. You know what I mean? Well, stop that. I'm not doing that anymore. What else can how else can I improve myself? You know what I mean? It can really start a chain of change. You know what I mean? Start a cycle of change just from that. And like, it's weird because if you imagine, it's not even just that, for example. So if you imagine there's a domestic abuse charge against somebody, or domestic violence, and they were intoxicated when they committed the violence, it's going to go down as alcohol related, and they've got an issue around alcohol. What they might not have told you is what they were doing all night while they were out is gambling at the same time. Got home and lost all the money. But again, that's something that's very rarely asked, whether it's probation, whether it's the prison service, the police, or like it's not asked. What's physical and what you can see is that is intoxicated, it's alcohol related, and and then when they do go to court and they do go to prison and things like that, that's what they'll get. That's what they've got the opportunity to refer to is for alcohol and substance misuse, and no one even look at the gambling. And that's what I'm trying to change. It's the real trying to put it on people's mind when they are having these conversations with people, whether it is in the community or in the criminal justice system.
So it sounds like it's not sort of legally recognized as an addiction.
No, it is getting there. It is getting.
But I mean,
there.
Socially, everyone would.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone would say that you can't be addicted to gambling. I think most people would be you can be addicted to it. I know people who are addicted to it.
Yeah. I think it's not that it's not recognized, and there is more guidance and stuff coming out. It's sort of like dripping through for it. We have got a national criminal justice team who work for GamCare, and they've done lots and lots of good work with local probations, and like regional probation services and the Met Police and stuff like that. So they've done quite a lot in those areas, and they're working hard to have top heavy change. You know what I mean? Change at the top that's going to filter down. Where for me, I'm more trying to do it from the bottom up. I'm trying to work with local people, trying to work in local prisons, local probation with local organizations, try and put it on people's mind on a more, obviously a local basis, but obviously try and create, an environment, more of an environment where it is thought of more, and then hopefully that spreads out as well from the bottom.
It's like an awareness raising.
Yeah, exactly. Because even if it comes from top down, it's still going to take a long time to filter down for the people at the bottom, which is brilliant what they are doing, because it needs to be changed. All change needs to be top down anyway. There needs to be change at the top for it to make a difference at the bottom, but that's still going to take time. But yeah, it's very much ingrained in culture. It's very accessible, so easy to hide. You know what I mean? People now you can gamble, online gambling and stuff like that. Obviously, it's so accessible, and it makes it so easy to hide as well. I could sit on the other side of the sofa, so my partner gambling, and she wouldn't have a clue. For all you know, I could be a gambler now and you wouldn't have a clue. Obviously, and that's the other side of it as well. If I'm coming into work intoxicated. If I were talking to you now as I were now intoxicated, or if I was using drugs, the physical signs you'd be able to tell. You know what I mean? And with gambling, there's not. So that's very much that sort of thing we try to look at, and that's why it's really important that we ask everyone the question. It's not, can't just be one or two people. You need to be asking everybody who you come into contact with in that sort of area of your work.
So you can give a kind of on the record and off the record response to this if you want, but okay. Yeah, like, so what has your attitude to gambling, because has it made you really hard line? Have you become like, oh, gambling is just bad? No. Or are you kind of like, no, it can become bad?
No, I think, and this is my opinion, and this is the service's opinion, this is GamCare say as well. I'm not a prohibitionist. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, gambling should be illegal. I think it needs to be more regulated. I think there needs to be more regulation for gambling industries. I think there needs to be more, it's definitely in terms of like advertising and stuff like that. And I don't, but I think prohibition and making things illegal just makes things 10 times worse. You know what I mean? I think you look at drugs and things like that, and I know I'm not saying all drugs should be legal, but we all understand, especially nowadays, and very much in the young culture as well, that it was the war on drugs as such that made it as widespread as it is now, and made it so we made it worse. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, more violent, more more money, more deaths, more.
Exactly.
More of everything, more.
Exactly, 100%. And if it were treated more as a health issue, like gambling should be, gambling's again it's still getting to be known as a public health issue, but slowly but surely it's getting there. Not everyone who drinks becomes alcoholics. You know what I mean? Not everyone who takes recreational drugs becomes a drug addict. I enjoy a drink, you know what I mean, much as the next person. The difference is there's not someone standing outside a pub with a bell shouting 3 pints for everybody, when if you've got an issue around gambling, it's quite easy if you get an email saying free bets. No one's sort of outside a pub with a bell shouting 3 pints to alcoholics, and that's the big difference, and that's where the change needs to be. That sort of thing, the attitude of industry, and it is, and again it is changing. It is changing. It is slowly changing, but I think we are getting there slowly but surely. I think it's going to take a long time, and I think it will eventually go the same way as other tobacco, alcohol, that sort of thing. I think it will eventually go that way. It's just going to take a long time, that's all.
It's kind of odd because there's been a weird, so it was really like, for example, with casinos, when I was working at the casino, you couldn't just go straight in. You had to sign up for membership. You had to wait 48 hours before you could go in.
Oh, really?
You had the 48-hour cooling off period. I think they've reduced that down to 24. I think you can, like, I know there are casinos in the country where you can literally just do a membership and go straight in now. There was like a general kind of loosening up, and they wanted to build like the big casino that's in Victoria Gate. I think something like that planned for a long time. And I do think there is you can certainly make the argument that it's good for your kind of growth and development and so on, especially a city like Leeds that has, big gambling firms here.
The fun is, well, with the Victoria Gate Casino, that's kind of how our service started. So when their service was being planned and stuff like that, part of their licensing agreement was they had to fund a study into the prevalence of gambling harm within Leeds, done by Leeds Beckett University. And that study actually found that there was double the national average of people in Leeds who were at risk of gambling harms. I can't remember the exact figures. It's double the national average of people who are at risk. So not double the national average of gamblers, or double the national average of people who are at risk, down to lots of reasons. Deprivation. We've got some of the most deprived areas in the country. In Leeds, as you know, I think, like, don't quote me on it, but about 9 places are in the top 1% of deprivation in England, something like that, 9 estates and stuff like that, you know what I mean, and all that sort of thing. That's why there's so much money in sort of like the drug and alcohol service here and things like that, because they've got a lot of work to do, you know what I mean, great work to do, you know what I mean. It's but all those issues pile on to individuals, and it creates all sorts of issues such as your gambling, drug addiction and all that. It's very much obviously there are people who are higher up in sort of the social ladder that can have issues around drugs, alcohol and gambling. But it's very much caused the most harm to the people at the bottom.
Well, it's one of those where it's not as big as a problem if you can afford to do it, kind of thing, but it's still a problem for a lot of people, and for the people
100%.
in that person's life, for the individual as well, once it's become problematic. But like you say, it's that sort of, it's not the thing in itself that's sort of necessarily the issue. That is, when it becomes problematic behavior, that's symptomatic of other kind of problems and other issues.
100%. Lots of environmental factors and things like that, especially with all kinds of illness and addiction and stuff like that. A lot of people don't know that suicide actually has the highest rate. Gambling actually has the highest rate of suicide of all addictions. Yeah, so study done in 2019 by suicidality. I can't remember who did the study, but it was suicidality amongst gamblers and young adults. The study found that 37% of men aged 16 to 24 who attempted to take their own life were problem gamblers, and 14.5% of the same age group of women. So compared to 3.6% of males who had no suicidal thoughts at all, 2% of women. So basically, they took a sample of people at around 4,000 people. They asked all those individuals if they'd ever attempt to take their own life. Then they had a percentage of people that did, percentage of people that didn't. So 37% of people that did attempt to take their own life were problem gamblers. That's in males, and 14.5% in females. And then only 3.6% of the people who didn't attempt to take their own life had an issue around gambling in males, and then 2% in females. So, and I think in a day and age where a lot of the focus is on young people's mental health, especially like young men's suicide, you know what I mean, biggest killer for men under 35, all that sort of stuff. These are still things that aren't spoken about enough. It just shows, and they're the people that are really trying to reach, you know what I mean, that are those people that are that deep into it, because for those individuals it's a means to an end, you know what I mean. Gambling in general is a means to an end because they're already in 30 grand's worth of debt, you know what I mean. The only way they're going to get out of that 30 grand's worth of debt is by gambling more, or so they think, by gambling more and by trying to get that money back. And the more you do that, the more shame builds up, especially if you're hiding it, the anxiety, the tiptoeing around, you know what I mean, not doing things with your friends, avoiding people, you know what I mean. And then that creates isolation, that creates depression and all those sort of things. And then suicidal thoughts, and sadly suicide as well, they're quite a big impact from all that, because they can only hide it for so long, and when they can't hide it anymore, they don't want to talk about it, and that's the next thing, that's the next step, you know what I mean, to literally taking it to the grave. You know, like you say, if the only way you can get out of it is to gamble more, because it's like, how can I get money quickly? Well, it's a big win. That's exactly the only way. That's the only way out. You're not going to think, oh well, I can get a debt payment loan or a repayment plan and spend the next 30 odd years paying so much. Exactly. It's not an exciting prospect, is it? Not at all. And it's not that win. It's not, that's not a win. Yeah. Exactly. And as well, like, even if someone did manage to pull off a big win and someone did manage to get the money to pay that sort of money back, it's not going to fix anything. They're going to carry on because they're running off that high. Then they've just won it. They've got the back square one. It's good. I can carry on. I'm on a win streak. You know what I mean? That's the big one. I'm on a win streak. But yeah, like I say, it's the facts and figures that people don't talk about. And in this day and age, it needs to be spoken about when so many young people are sadly taking their own life. Well, I mean, we've said this, but it doesn't get the social awareness that it deserves. Like, it is an issue. Exactly. For example, there was I was doing some training earlier this year, and there was a lovely lady there, and she was talking about that when she was a young girl, a lot of them used to go to casinos and stuff like that. And they were like, but there was someone there who were, we knew he had a gambling problem, but we didn't invite him anyway, and he'd come in and spend all his money and all this, and you're always in debt and all this. And I like, but the more I think about it, like, if you knew someone was an alcoholic, you wouldn't invite him to the pub. You know what I mean? You wouldn't invite him out on town. You know what I mean? But because it were gambling, it wasn't seen as a real addiction. You know what I mean? It wasn't causing any physical harm. You don't put, because you think of addiction, you think of putting something in your body. You know what I mean? Whether it is alcohol or substances and things like that, you think of putting things in your body. And it wasn't seen as that. You're not doing that. So a lot of people, it really fell under, it will and still does fall under the radar of addiction.
I'm thinking about that sort of point of loss of control, of like, you know, because it's like with alcoholism, it's like, when is someone an alcoholic? Because you can't have you can't just do definition. It drinks X amounts of units at these intervals, because for some people, they can drink loads and they will drink all the time and they will not consider themselves an alcoholic, but other people might. But then other people won't drink as much, but will be alcoholics because they like desperately need it and they use it. So it's this whole weird thing of like,
100%.
Can't really nail down.
There's in alcohol, there's like you've got alcoholics, you've got your normal bog standard, what you think of as an alcoholic is people who sit at home all day, they don't work, they don't do anything, and they drink if they need to have a drink, if they don't have a drink, they're shaking and stuff like that. On the flip side, that you've got your functional alcoholic. These people that still go to work every day, they might be really successful, have a real good business, but every day when they come home, they'll drink 2-3 bottles of wine. If they're still doing that every day, and if they feel really unsettled and stuff, if they don't do that, then they would still be considered an alcoholic, I think. And then it's very similar with gambling. So, well, not really, actually, it's really quite different. So if you look,
it's kind of similarly defined, isn't it? It's like it becomes a problem when it starts affecting you adversely and other people adversely, where there's like damage, physical harms, and
100%. I mean, it's when it's starting to
theft, robbery.
That could be one of them. Like we like to use like two terms. One term is disordered gambling. So that's gambling that compromises and disrupts and damages family, personal, and recreational. It's when it's getting in the way of certain things in your life. So instead of paying your bills, buying shopping, going to gambling instead, and then you're bored. You have a quick bet. You're doing this instead, and it's getting in the way of certain things in your life. You're not getting the same enjoyment out of life that you would otherwise because you're gambling. So that
makes sense as a way to prioritize. Because it's like when it becomes a priority over your actual priorities.
Exactly.
You need to have a basic kind of standard of being a civilized person, eating food and doing things. And when you start giving that up for something else, then
exactly that's when it's starting. That's when you know there's something there and needs help, and it can take over very quick. You know what I mean? It can happen, and I think as well.
Well, we all go through bad periods as well, where things like that happen, where you kind of like, I just don't care about the normal things at the moment.
Exactly.
But it's like, how long does that period last, and how much damage is it doing while you're in that frame of mind, or that, you know, mental health position, or whatever we want to call it.
100%. It really does vary from individual to individual. Some people like me might be able to realize quite quickly what's happening and where it's going and slipping into it, and they can put things in place there. And then there's lots of different blockers and things like that you can put in place for online gambling. So you can start putting things like that, obviously spending limits and stuff like that, which I don't think really are that good. But I think we're spending limits. Although I would, if that's what you want to do, I wouldn't say don't do it. I think it's very easy just to put it all on. So if you put 50 quid a month spending limit on, you're going to spend 50 quid a month. You know what I mean? Especially if you have got an issue there with gambling and it's not, you're going to spend that. So if you can afford to lose 50 a month and you want to gamble 50 a month, that's fine. But I can't guarantee, but it'll probably be gone in a day.
Yeah, the likelihood is,
exactly. It'll just go straight over. But yeah, there's lots of things you can put in like that. But then as you do dig deeper, as we were talking about earlier, the more you dig deeper and the more it becomes an issue, that's when it really gets really difficult to get out of it. And that's when it gets more and more difficult to reverse. And that's when it gets more and more difficult to think about things like blockers, because there's no other way out of it anyway. So that's when it gets really, really difficult. And there is a really fine line, you know what I mean? And it's not even linear, you know what I mean? There's no guarantee. Someone might only gamble once a year, for example. But when they gamble once a year, they gamble everything they've got in their bank account. They will get a £200 overdraft. They will ask to borrow money and things like that. They really shouldn't be gambling. They would still be classed as a high-risk gambler, even though they're only doing it once a year. Because eventually that can catch up with them, and it become the one time it doesn't go their way, or they can't borrow any money, or if they put themselves in too much debt over that one night, it can quite easily snowball and carry on to the next week or the next night. So it's not really linear at all in a lot of cases, or some cases. And the plus on the other side as well, certain types of gambling, people might be all right. You know what I mean? People might be able to put £5 on football at weekend and be absolutely fine with that. But as soon as they go on online slots, or as soon as they go into a casino, it's a different kettle of fish. You know what I mean? Things go, you know what I mean?
Just certain environments or certain tools. It's just like, I can't control myself with this.
Exactly. It can become very compulsive, you know what I mean? Exactly right. Those environments, like in casinos, as you know, like some of the things that they do to keep you there and stuff like that, to keep you enticed and to keep you
time in. Well, it's like time on device, isn't it? But it's like time in the casino, time on the machine. Right. Yeah.
And again, it's not saying that every person that does those things, not every person who goes into casino is going to become a gambling addict. Not every person who uses online slots is going to become a gambling addict. But obviously, there's more high risk forms of gambling as well. You know what I mean? Like your online slots, they're really, really high risk because they are so easy to hide and stuff like that. But yeah, as I was saying, jumping off topic there, as I was saying before, it's not linear at all. There's no one size fits all for it. It's really difficult to pinpoint when it becomes an issue, and when would the right time to stop, when would the right time, you know, when should they have stopped, you know, and that sort of thing. It's really hard to pinpoint that because it quickly snowballs and quickly takes over.
So I've been really lax on the time, but I've been interested in what we've
it's fine. Don't worry.
What I'll do is I might whiz through some of the questions, but before I crack on with that, I want to just get your kind of ideas or thoughts on. So I was thinking of an old film. I think it was Philip Seymour Hoffman was in it. Who was playing this guy who was a banker. I think it was based on a true story, and what he was doing was he was stealing funds from the bank and going like either across the border or into another state and sort of gambling there. And I've worked in stock dealing as well, and you know, and we've all heard of sort of casino capitalism. Like, so one side of it is like, could someone who's like a gambling addict quite easily just slot themselves into sort of the market, being there, gambling with other people's money kind of thing?
100%.
And could they be like, is there any way to identify problem gamblers there? Like,
it is really, really difficult because stocks and shares and stuff like that at the minute, and crypto as well, all that sort of thing, it is still a gamble. It is still gambling, and people don't understand just because you put £200 on a stock don't mean you're going to be a millionaire. You know what I mean? I think in terms of recognizing, a lot of the signs and symptoms are the same. They're hiding how much they're putting on, they're hiding how much they're investing, they're hiding how much they're losing. They're lying to people about it, not telling the truth. They're avoiding people because of it. All those sort of things. It's very, very similar because of the harms are the same. You're still losing money, you're still potentially putting yourself in debt. There's still it's causing relationship issues because of the lying, because of the deceit and stuff like that. A lot of the harms are still the same. So in terms of recognizing it, it's the same sort of thing. You need to be asking the same questions. So although they might not recognize it as gambling, and that's probably where there's more blurred lines, if they don't personally recognize it as gambling, if they don't think about, they think of it's just the stocks, it's just the stock market. I'm trying to make money, I need to make money. You know what I mean? Because obviously those people are very money driven anyway. So yeah, that's probably where the blur line would be, when do they start to recognize their own gambling? But there is lots in those sort of things in general. I mean, the whole sort of thing of stealing from employers and stuff like that, stealing from all that sort of stuff is very, very common. There's lots and lots of stories out there now of lived experience stories, some of which have come to GamCare to talk to us about it, about their experience of stealing from employers, knocking on doors and committing fraud, telephone fraud, all that sort of thing, just to be able to get money to gamble with. Lots and lots of those stories out there. It's not so much of what I'm dealing with in the prisons that I'm working in. It's a very much different clientele. I'm sure there are some people there, but it's not so much of that clientele who I'm sort of seeing. It's more on the lower end who would be able to put that together in the nice way possible to them. It's more people who are more at risk, more substance misuse issues as well, more on the lower side. And you see they're probably more on the middle to high class, you know what I mean? Who have got their own businesses, who have been embezzling funds from somewhere, that sort of thing, whether it's fraud, what's it called, where you claim money back and stuff like that. I've had a brain, my head's gone. I can't remember the word.
Are you thinking of a specific fraud?
Yeah, it's where you where you claim money back from
money laundering, or
where like claim money back from your employer. So if I want to get like a train ticket, I'd claim
expenses.
Thank you. Yeah. So a lot of that sort of stuff as well. People try. There were actually if I'm not wrong, there was actually a member of parliament recently that got in trouble with that, and he's recently been might have been a councillor or something, for a member of parliament, like councillor or something like that.
That probably happens every week.
Yeah, but it was because of gambling. And he's ended up in prison. There's lots and lots of those stories out there, and it is, like I say, those sort of white collar crimes. You know what I mean? It is very much more middle to high class, rather than who I'm dealing with, who are mainly right at the bottom, who are stealing from a local shop to try to sell to someone in the street to pay for the gambling and the drugs, or it's a robbery, you know what I mean, that sort of thing.
Okay, so we'll go into questions. Obviously, you've talked a fair bit about COVID already, so I'll kind of narrow that down so we don't have to do, and I don't have to put you through a big whole COVID reliving experience. But yeah, I mean the sort of, you were working in care homes, so I imagine it was panic stations sort of early on for you.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously, feel free to chat a bit more about that and tell a bit more about that if you want to. But also, like the other part of the question I normally ask is sort of how that changed your work, sort of long term coming out, and sometimes that's to do with the whole mental health thing that came out and so on. But yeah, so tell us a bit more about COVID, and then tell us if you think there are anything that, you know, did it change your work?
Yeah, I think in terms of the work, I think it's very difficult to say, because at the start I didn't work in where
totally different job.
I'm in a different job, but from what I've heard, it changed it a lot, because obviously it was very much the main thing, I think, across the board for everybody who work these kind of jobs, is the working from home aspect of it. Knowing I'm at home now, I've worked from home, and before I started this job, I'd never worked from home before in my life. I was always in the care home, I was always at the drug and alcohol service. I was never working from home. So when I started this, it was really bizarre, because everyone had been doing it for so long, you know what I mean? Everyone had been doing it for like 2 years by that point, like a year and a half, 2 years. So then when I started it, it was all very much, it was all bizarre. But
so that was your first experience of working from home, was coming into this job after the lockdown. That's quite an interesting way round to, because obviously people during lockdown, a lot of people had to learn this whole process and develop a whole kind of etiquette around, like, how do we do working from home and collaborating long distance and all of this kind of stuff. And then you've kind of come in at the deep end and just had to pick everything up. But
Yeah,
I suppose that's kind of easier in a way, because the work's being done on that side.
Yeah, that's true. I think a lot of people kind of got used to it. I did find it really, really difficult. So like I started in the September 21, and then we were still spending like a couple of days in the office and then a few days at home, that sort of thing, and that was fine. It was good. But then sort of by the time November came around, it when the Omicron were going around and everyone had it. I had it. Everyone I knew had it. Everyone had it. And at that point, it was everyone working from home again. And then there was the sort of from November to like the new year, where it was just constantly working from home, and that I found that really, really challenging.
That was the really hard one, wasn't it? At the end, where it just went on forever, and it was just dark and cold, and it was like, oh, please let this lockdown end.
Yeah, exactly.
We tasted freedom. Let us out.
Exactly. Yeah, we tasted freedom, and then it was ripped away. But yeah, that was real. That for me was really, really difficult for all aspects. You know what I mean? My mental health, for how I did my job, I found it really difficult to focus, really difficult to get engaged, really difficult to all that sort of stuff. You know what I mean? Because you just couldn't bother. You know what I mean? You're at home, and when you're in, I suppose for the first 2 weeks it were fine, and then it that wasn't nice at all. But I think now, as we move past COVID, I think now I am out and about a lot more, and I am seeing people in the prisons, and I've got opportunity to go into Leeds and have face-to-face meetings and stuff like that. I quite enjoy my day, whatever, a couple of days working from home now. You know what I mean? I feel I can get a lot done.
Yeah, and you know how to work that day now.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I suppose it has given me more of a sort of. I sort of got the COVID experience from a white collar position, but without the furlough, which everyone seemed to get, and any furlough.
You missed all the highlights of it then.
Yeah, basically.
Just on the front, the front lines of it, and then.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, since we Brexited, have you noticed any change in your work? Has anything changed for you? Has it been good, bad, or no change?
Professionally, I think there's very little that I can see from my roles that's changed. Especially in this sort of sector, the care sector, the issues are always there. I suppose you could argue the cost of living and stuff like that, which is obviously partly or mainly to do with Brexit, debated, but.
Has there been an uptick in sort of gambling problems or anything?
Yeah, I think universally, because people are now short of money. I think, for example, if I'm really, really struggling and I've got 20 quid for the rest of the week, I can put it all on black and I can have 40 quid for the rest of the week. Put it on black again, I could have 80 quid for the rest of the week. And if that comes through 2 or 3 times, then it don't come through 3 out of 4 times, it lad. You know what I mean? So, and then people get into that mindset, they want to start losing, then 3 out of 4 times I'll put 20 quid overdraft on and try and win it back, and then it don't come through. I'm minus 20 quid down, I need to get that 20 quid back, and they'll go again, you know what I mean, that sort of thing, and that's how it all ticks over. So universally, from that sort of aspect, it's probably has affected my work, but again, I didn't really know, I didn't really see it personally, because when I started, obviously September 21, it was all very much in the cycle, you know what I mean? It had already really been done. We were in the middle of COVID, you know what I mean? There were a lot of Brexit wasn't really spoken about then, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
It kind of, no one really spoke about it. It was very much, everything was COVID.
Yeah. I don't know if you know the answer, but that was also making me think, do we know anything about how it changed the stats during lockdown? Because I would imagine a lot of people, a lot of time on their hands, a lot of easy access to phones and stuff. I would imagine there was a big uptake in people gambling.
So it did go up. So people bored, people isolated, people stuck at home, you know what I mean? All those things put together can be really dangerous for anything really, whether it is having a drink at 12 o'clock in the afternoon, 11 o'clock in the afternoon, or whether it is gambling as well. What we found, so we were expecting our referrals to sort of go up overnight. It kind of went up within I've been told anyway. I wasn't here then, like I say, but it was around 6 months into lockdown. So once the harm has had chance to develop. So people would probably start gambling and then they'd do whatever, and then the harm had developed slowly but surely. And then when it came to tipping point, when they realised what were happening, that's when people were seeking support. So statistics are out now that the gambling industry did take more in that year, 2020, 2021. Online gambling obviously went through the roof, but that could also be because the majority of land-based operations, well, they were all closed, you know what I mean? All land-based places were closed. So obviously online gambling went up.
So that, like you say, that's easier access. People got it 24 hours. You can make smaller bets, I'm guessing. There, so it's easier entry.
All that sort of stuff. And I think as well, I'm fairly certain that there was a record number of new gamblers as well over that period, which again doesn't really surprise me. I think we're probably starting to come out to the other side now. I think people who are sorting themselves have managed to, who are going to, obviously a lot of people there that still have issues because of all that situation. But I think the majority of people have come forward for support now. And if they have got support and haven't just stopped on their own. So I think we are probably seeing that backlog sort of filtering out now, which is really good.
There's good and bad with the gaming industry, but there is that, and you could criticize it as tokenism and so on, but like there is the kind of stop and think, and like they do, that is quite visible now in like betting shops, for example, and so on.
I think the issue with it is that if someone is already that deep into it,
that's not going to make a difference.
It's not going to make any difference at all, you know what I mean? And I think we do work with industry locally, and we have got a national industry team as well. And we don't expect them to be counsellors, you know what I mean? We don't expect these people to, we know why they work in these places, you know what I mean? Especially the land-based ones. They're there to make money for that business. That's their job. That's their role. And we wouldn't try to stop them doing that. And we wouldn't expect them to counsel people to stop gambling. But it's about just pointing people in the right directions, asking the right questions, you know what I mean? Says, are you all right? Are you doing all right on there? Says, do you think you've done enough for today? You know what I mean? That sort of stuff, you know what I mean?
Like they do in bars now, where
exactly.
We'll cut you off. Okay, you can go somewhere else, but that's up to the other place if they continue to serve you.
Exactly, and it's exactly the same thing. There needs to be that duty of care on them as well. It doesn't have to be. You don't have to counsel them. You don't have to tell them how to get better, how to stop gambling. But you can say, "Oh, come on, I think you've had enough today." You know what I mean? I think we'll leave it for today. Those sort of conversations, which I think when we work with people, I think that is becoming a more cultural in these industries now. But then the opposite side of that is the online sort of stuff, because it's not face to face, because it's so impersonal, you know what I mean? It's not
it's intangible as well, because they don't have physical buildings. You know, like, who are you going to ring and who are you going to write to? How can you engage with them to sort of bring them on board?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's where it changes. And that's where it becomes a lot more harmful. And it's the same with women gamblers as well. You know what I mean? Like, probably 10 to 15 years ago, a woman probably wouldn't have been caught dead going into a bookies. You know what I mean? It was very much a man's world. Obviously there will be some, but I am generalizing a bit there. I probably shouldn't, but the majority wouldn't, and it was very much a man's world, and it's still seen as that now. So women are a lot less likely, when they do find themselves in those situations where they are gambling too much, whether it is online bingo or whatever, they are less likely to come forward for support, because it's a lot more shameful for them. It's seen as a lot more, because it is a man's thing and it is a man's world. They're a lot less likely. It's evening out year on year though. There are more women gamblers coming forward year by year, and the number of people coming in for support and treatment is evening out year on year. So we are getting better with that, which is really good. We have got a women's team as well at GamCare that do that whole sort of stuff. I think as well, if you just look at the advertisement like that they do, like you touched on it, like you think about
how it's advertised, who it's appealing to,
exactly
the kind of like it's all
Foxy.
very 1970s porn still, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
1970s cigarette adverts of like, this is cool and sophisticated.
Exactly. Look at Foxy Bingo, you know what I mean? It's very much daytime television aimed towards, it's on after you sponsored Jerry McKyle, now sponsors Loose Women, you know what I mean? Very much aimed towards women who are at home, possibly with children, possibly children who've gone to school, that sort of thing, you know what I mean? Very much aimed at them. It tries to create a community for those individuals who might be isolated, you know what I mean, because they are stuck at home and that sort of thing. And then on the flip side of that, you've got your William Hill, and there's all lads, you know what I mean, Lads Brooks, Paddy Power, you know what I mean, on sports betting and stuff like that. That's very much lads, you know what I mean? It's very much that sort of thing. And it's one thing that the gambling industry are really, really good at. It's advertising, really good at it, and they know exactly what they're doing when they put these advertisements out.
So we'll do let's do climate change. So I'm not sure how this would fit with your role, but is there anything in your role? Do you do anything in your role? Can you do anything in your role towards adaptation, mitigation, or awareness raising?
Obviously, you can always do more, you know what I mean, no matter what role you are doing, whether it is the public transport instead of driving, you know what I mean, we have got like cycle to work schemes and stuff like that in GamCare. There's always more you can do. I think from my personal role though, I think I don't drive, so we get public transport everywhere. At the minute anyway, I'm learning to drive, so that might be. But there's all those, I honestly can't think of anything.
No, I can't think of any ways that's how it would fit in. I mean, I can, like, and it will obviously be relevant because it's going to affect everything, but and it is affecting everything. But it's not, because there's not anything I can think of that's particularly high carbon.
No.
There could be an element of, I mean, depending on how much credence you give to things like climate anxiety, of like, you know, people might gamble more, or there could be.
I suppose if people are anxious in that way out, there's definitely the possibility if it's going to add to anxiety, anything that adds to anxiety increases the chance of addiction and stuff like that, and creating unhealthy coping mechanisms. No matter where that anxiety is come from, if it is climate, if it is COVID, you know what I mean, or just general anxiety, anything like that will raise the risk of addiction.
Okay, so we'll do social media, which I think will be a bit of a longer answer for you, because I would imagine that you have to do some.
I do.
So it's more and more part of people's work every day, and you know, like if you're not producing it directly, you're quite often involved in it. Not for everyone, of course, but for many of us. So social media, do you find value in it? Do you find that it gives you a good return on the time you invest in it? Like, if you make something and you put it out there, does it do what you want it to do, and does it give you the thing back, or are you just going put things out?
I think it can be very, very useful, and I actually look after our Facebook page and our Twitter page, so I do put things out on them. I look after it. We use obviously stuff to set things up so it goes out after. And when I first started using it, the return was really, really good. We had lots of, especially Twitter, really, really good, all that sort of stuff. But I think the more my imagination started to run dry, and I started to run out of things to post, you know what I mean, I started recycling more and more posts, that sort of thing. It has slowly gone the other way, and it's got I'm getting less and less return for it. But we are looking, because of, as I mentioned before, we are going to be expanding out to Yorkshire, Humber. There's going to be a bit more of a push on different areas now. It's not so much going to be just Leeds, and we'll have to look at different people to follow, hopefully more communication with other services and stuff like that through social media. There's definitely value in it. I think it takes and in a way, so on my personal social medias, I post nothing. I have it, but I have it to my nose in. You know what I mean? I don't post anything. I never post anything. And I think to move, and I didn't before, even before I took it, the work one on board as well. I think that sort of transitioning from not posting anything, trying to drum up things to put out there that's going to make people want to read it and look at our service and look at what we do, more of an advertisement sort of role. Advertising what we're doing. We do put like, even when we're out at events and stuff like that, we'll take photos, say we're out here today, so come say hi, you know what I mean, whatever. And then we'll put that out. It can, like I say, and I think as well, because of the work that we are doing, because it is around gambling, and a lot of people looking at their phones anyway, where they are gambling, or the tablet or the laptop, whatever. And then there's gambling ads, you know what I mean? There's even when I started this role, and I was Googling what is gambling harms, reading reports on gambling addiction, or trying stuff like that, you know what I mean? Even just from looking at stuff like that, even I was getting gambling adverts. So for people that gamble anyway online, they're going to be getting more and more, loads more than me. So I think for what we do, there is real merit, because there is the odd, even if one person takes a look at it and says, you know what, I think I need to, I didn't realize that 37% of men who attempt to take their own life, you know what I mean, or I didn't realize that there's one suicide from gambling addiction every day. I really do something, I'm going to end up there, you know what I mean? Even if someone just looks at that and it just changes the way they think for that moment, even if they don't follow through with it, they change the way they think with that moment. And then the more, even if they do continue gambling, it's still something they can come back to. It can still start a cycle of thought, you know what I mean? And start that, how they think about what they're doing and where they could be if they do continue. So I think for that, and that's why I continue doing it. It's not in my job role. It's not something that is not in my contract or anything like that. You know what I mean? It's not in my job specification. It's something that I wanted to do anyway when I started. So I feel like it's where there is definitely more I could do. So I don't think I'm doing it as well as I could, because it is still time consuming. You know what I mean? It is still it does take a lot of time to plan out a week of posts on social media, and then to create these posts and then to put them onto action and stuff like that and also as well, because obviously you're meant to interact with lots of other posts, get your algorithm going and stuff like that. And even that's time consuming when you're at work, you know what I mean, when you have got other things to do. To answer it in a bit more of a nutshell, I do it. I do find it useful. I think sometimes I don't get a good return for my work. I think if we're just going off pure numbers like views and stuff like that, but I think the thought of not doing it and potentially missing somebody who really needs it, that counteracts that, and I think that's enough for me.
I mean, when you mentioned kind of recycling posts and so on, like that can be useful, because a lot of the people that, you know, obviously a lot of people don't see everything. They're only certain things and so on, and that can bring in more people.
100%. I don't know if it's to do with everything, because I do get the most of my post views from Twitter, and I don't know if it's because of all the change that's been going on at Twitter and stuff. You know what I mean? All that, we're not verified or anything like that, so I don't know if that's had a big impact. But you can notice when I first started doing social media, from getting thousands of views, a couple of thousand of views, not so much interaction and stuff like that, but views. Now down to getting like 100, 150, maybe 200 at a time. Maybe less, a lot of the time less. So you can see, I don't know if that's to do with the actual, because I am recycling posts and I'm not working to their algorithm right, or because of the big change that's obviously happened at Twitter with Elon Musk taking over and us not being verified.
Has there been any new connections or new customers or new work that you know have come from?
I think when I've seen been a good few people where I've seen something that they post, and then I can message them and just be like, is there anything, if you've got an email address that's not that I can contact you with and stuff like that, especially from the criminal justice aspect. There's like the Leeds Crime Reduction Network, it's called. They're really, really good, and so they have like these they have like it's not really a conference, more like a working group, and they'll talk about a different subject for that group of people, talk and stuff like that. And I presented at their annual conference back in November, and that all come about from chatting to them on social media to start with. And we've done different training sessions for different charities, and that's spread out into a lot more work then in that sort of sector. So 100%, there's always opportunity to connect with more people, and I think that's definitely invaluable as well. You know what I mean? I think it's
I think that's more valuable.
Yeah, I think 100%. Yeah, 100. I've just been on there, just a social media presence, like I say, just being there just makes all the difference. And I think you need to be nowadays, especially if you are doing these kind of roles where it is talking to different charities, talking different services, trying to promote something such as gambling harms and stuff like that, or any sort of health help, you know what I mean, counseling, anything like that. You need to be on social media.
And because a lot of those, like, you know, we mentioned alcohol at the beginning, but a lot of these like addictions, they're comorbid. So someone will have an alcohol and gambling problem and potentially drug problem.
100%, yeah.
Or drugs and gambling, or, you know, like various 100%. Combinations of
100%. And I think that's the difference as well. So whereas obviously it's really, really good that there are drug and alcohol services on social media as well, I think when you're dealing with the most typical people who are alcoholics and things like that, obviously they do scroll on social media, but they're a lot more self-aware of what they're going through. Whereas with gambling, because it is so hidden, and sometimes it's also hidden to the individual, they don't realize what's happening, they're a lot more likely to just brush it off. And then there's a score, let's say if you are on social media and they do see something like that, they're a lot more likely to think about it, it's a lot more likely to stay with them.
I assume you're thinking the same way as I am with the sort of posting and stuff of like, you want to put out nice, beautiful, clever posts that you think are nice and clever and beautiful, and then everyone else likes them and gives them lots of attention, and that's great, and that's a good thing. And then ideally from that, new business or whatever comes. But the truth more is that someone notices you and notices something and is like, oh, that's a thing that exists, and hopefully they remember it, and then you build a connection. But it's kind of the connection bit that's more important, but you were quite often driven towards the kind of sales thing of like, bring 100%. People into your sales funnel and all of that.
Oh, 100%. Because that everyone always looks at the numbers, you know what I mean?
How many likes has it got? Does it matter? How many customers have we got?
Yeah, exactly. That's all. Exactly. But you know, it's the quality as well. It's a quality of the people that even if 10 people saw it and 10 people got something meaningful out of it, or if 100 people just saw it and just scrolled past it and didn't have any effect, you know what I mean? You soon have the 10 people, you potentially change 10 people's lives. You know what I mean? I think that's a really important way to look at it. And a lot of this is, as I'm saying, I've never really thought of it like that before. I want, like, looking at it like that, I've never really thought of it like that. And I think if you asked me yesterday, I wouldn't have thought of that, you know what I mean? But I think that is really important.
If you could change any 3 things about your work, what would you change? So you can go carte blanche, they can be realistic, they can be unrealistic, you don't have to use all 3.
Again, I was thinking about this as well earlier, and I think it's a really difficult question. Firstly, I will happily, it sounds like I'm blowing my own the company trumpet, but I've worked in this sort of sector for probably nearly 8 years, something like that. And I've worked for 2 other services, and GamCare is the best service that I've worked for in that sort of way. It pays the best. We're in quite a small team up here. That's always nice. You know what I mean? There's a lot of job satisfaction there. In terms of things that I would change, other people's attitudes towards what I do and those sort of things. I think it's very easy for someone to, and I know we all do it, when I'm talking to different services and we're having these conversations and they're really, really on board, they really want to be involved, and we'll do the training and then that's sort of it. You know what I mean? You can ask them a bit more, well, have you implemented a screening question, or have you done this, have you done that? And they're like, oh, it kind of slips under the radar a lot because it's more of a checkbox to them. Okay, they've done the training, they know what to look for, but are they really asking the questions? You know what I mean? And I think that could make it a lot, because at the end of the day, the only people that are missing out are the people that need support. As people aren't asking the questions. And I do believe that as someone who used to do a lot of assessments anyway, it's really easy to find your own way of doing assessments and not ask the question as you should. You know what I mean? Yeah, and that's probably one thing I would change, but it's not so much about my role though. I don't, in terms of my role, I honestly don't know. I just don't know. Now thinking earlier, I honestly don't know.
It sounds like that's quite a hard one for you because, you know, like, because it is that progression of like, you know, like you say, you've enjoyed all your roles, but this is a role that's kind of given you more than the other roles you've had before.
I
and
think
plus you've got that work experience now, and you've got that background that gave you a deeper understanding.
Yeah,
of this role. So
100%.
you've got a real kind of like, I know this job. So there's that sense of mastery as well as the sense of purpose.
100%. Yeah, I think it's the sense of freedom I get with it as well. You know,
yeah, and you're fairly autonomous, so it's ticking all those three boxes.
Exactly. Like when I worked, obviously when I worked at the care home, it was shift work. You know what I mean? It wasn't a lot of overtime. You could plan your day out, but it wouldn't go that way.
Yeah, you were always reactive. You couldn't be that proactive.
Exactly. And it was the same at the drug and alcohol service as well. There was a lot of firefighting. You know what I mean? It's always putting out fires, always an issue, always a problem.
Yeah.
Whereas where I am now, it's a lot more laid back. It's a lot more relaxed. I can kind of do everything at my own pace.
Yeah.
If I need to go out somewhere and do something, I can just go and do it. I don't need to have permission to do everything. You know what I mean? I can kind of do everything at my own pace.
Yeah.
And that's really valuable for me. I think it really creates that work-life balance for one. And I think it really keeps you motivated to because it's not as regimented. You know what I mean? It's not as set. It can be quite something that I get. How I work is still quite chaotic because that's all I've ever known. You know what I mean? Everything's always a mess. There's always things all over the place. There's
always things going wrong. There's always funding being reduced, and
exactly. My inbox is always a mess. All that sort of stuff. You know
half my colleagues have just left.
Yeah, exactly. But it's all it's organized mess now, and I know what I'm doing, and I'm quite comfortable with it.
Some of that's experience, you know, from your previous roles and knowing how to manage that, and then all those other experience. I mean, going through COVID as well, and then jumping into this role through that. It is a constant sort of. So all those skills you've learned, the kind of firefighting skills, you've still got them. You can still use them, but now you've got that.
That was the really difficult thing. So when I was saying I was working from home for that long period over COVID, that was what was really difficult because I started in the September. Then by the November, I wasn't leaving the house at all. I'd worked all through COVID. I was going out every day to work. I was leaving the house, and then all of a sudden I was at home. And that was the first time I'd really experienced that through COVID. Whereas everyone else had furlough and stuff like that and had time to adjust. I really hadn't because I was still out and about 5 days a week at work, 6 days a week at care home, that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Like, what the hell's this?
Yeah, exactly. Like, what's this? Because obviously we were still going through it, and this work, when that was going on, this work was quite difficult because everyone else was still working from home as well. You know what I mean? So,
and I bet you felt like you didn't know what the hell you were doing.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Like, am I doing anything right here? Am I like, no one's around to tell me? I can't talk to colleagues.
Exactly. And when I saw so that were because I was still that used to being on the go all the time. And doing that firefighting when I didn't have to do it, I was like, what am I doing? What can I do? Nothing to do. And then when I was like, what can I do? There's nothing to do. I just It's okay, just take a deep breath, you know what I mean? You don't have to be doing something all the time.
Exactly.
Exactly, you can have a breath. And the more I've settled into that, the more I've realised that's where your work-life balance comes in. That's when you can sort of, it's okay to take a minute. It's always, it's okay to go for a walk around garden, go out and have some fresh air for 10, you know what I mean? That sort of stuff, it's okay to do it. And where I haven't really had that in any other of my roles before.
Yeah. And it's okay to do the thinking, the ruminating, the problem solving part. Like, you don't always have to be producing. A lot of it's about thinking through problems, especially if you've got a role with an element of strategy in it, where you're trying to build various connections, relationships.
100%.
You've got to think about what you're doing, where you're going, who you're going to see, when you're going to see them, how you're going to approach that. And like, okay, so I want to make a connection with them, but could it help to make a connection with these people first? And I know these people know these people, and all of that kind of stuff.
100%.
But that doesn't always appear as like active kind of producing and making things.
Yeah, exactly.
So you feel a bit guilty sometimes of just like,
I felt really guilty.
I look like I'm not working, but I'm thinking about all the work.
Exactly. When I first started, I felt really guilty because I felt it was so much. Like there was so much on the go.
It's like, I'm getting paid here, and normally I'm working my ass off to do that.
Exactly. But you just realize that you don't have to. Like I say, you don't have to be moving all the time.
You don't have to be running around and producing to be
exactly.
Working,
100%. You've hit the nail on the head.
Okay, so I'm going to finish off. I normally finish with the change question, but I thought I'd finish off with UBI for a change.
Okay.
So, are you familiar with UBI?
Is it universal? Yeah, universal basic income. Yeah, a little bit.
If we had a universal basic income, how do you think that would change your work? So your own work kind of specifically, and how you would think about work, but also think about it from the perspective of, in your role, if there was a UBI in society, how do you think that might affect the kind of gambling harms issue as well?
Yeah.
So, if you answer for yourself first, and then maybe we'll consider that.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea, and I'd love to say that everyone would be really happy with it and everyone would be perfect, but we know, I think realistically it'd stop people wanting to progress as much. I think I really don't know. I think difficult one. I think I'd still
for yourself. Would you still do this job? Would you work the same amount of hours, or would you be like, do you know what? Can I do this 3 or 4 days a week and have an extra bit of free time? Maybe do your own projects, or would you be like, no, I'm going to work this as much as possible, or maybe more hours, because this is like, I'm really, really dedicated and I want to give everything to this. Like,
I think I'd probably carry on. I think if I could earn the money that I'm earning now, if that money stayed the same and I could do the same, if I could do more for more money.
Yeah, so you're getting everything paid for, but then all of the work that you're doing is just like bonus. So you're getting that on top of it.
I would probably do more then. I would probably do more. I'd probably, if I could change my days, I'm a big believer in the 4-day week sort of thing, you know what I mean? Yeah. Doing 9 till 9 or something like that, or 6. Give me 6 4 days a week, you know what I mean? I'd smash through that and have that. Give me that Friday off. You know,
you're ambitious. I ain't got that kind of energy. 4 days, 9 to 5. That's more than enough. My perfect week is a 24-hour work week. That's what I want to get.
24-hour. Yeah, I think like if I could get the same, like if we do the same money I'm on now, if I could do it, 4 days a week, give me 6 4 days a week. You finish at 6. You've still got enough time to chill out on an evening, have some food, you still got your own time if you want to do something. You know what I mean?
And a 3-day weekend.
And a 3-day weekend, you know what I mean? That's perfect for me. You know what I mean? I'd do that any day of the week. I'm a big believer in that. But I think, like I say, if I could earn more by doing more, I'd do that. And then if I wanted to, I could do hours on a Friday as well. It completely depends on it.
So you wouldn't just sit at home and go straight on all the online gambling?
I think I get some funny looks. To be fair, no one would know though, so that'll be the thing, wouldn't it? Nobody would know.
So, how do you think it would affect the stats if there was a UBI? Do you think there'd be more gambling, or do you think there'd be less because people, they don't have that pressure to kind of, there isn't that kind of where people are desperate and they gamble as they're like, well, I'm never going to make enough money, but hopefully this will get something for me. That kind of motivation. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think
it's really hard to call. I mean, it's 50-50, isn't it?
It really is 50-50. I think, because I think, I say some people, it will affect people for the better. Some people will get more and they will think of the money more, and they will, or maybe not have the money to gamble if they haven't gone that far to go into debt. They might be a lot more likely to take a step back if it is getting in the way of other things in their life. But at the same time, people on the lowest income still, even though it is universal, people who have got the issues to start with, I think I don't think it'll change a great deal. I really don't. The more I think about it, I don't think it'll, from a gambler's point of view, I think if they're going to gamble anyway. Same as people that use substances, you know what I mean? If they're going to use substances, they're going to do it anyway. It don't matter what kind of, if an alcoholic won £1 million, do you think he'd stop drinking? If a gambler who's already gambling all of a sudden started getting a constant influx of cash, do you think they stop gambling? I really don't. I think a lot of them, if they weren't willing to change already, I don't think it'd make them more.
Yeah, if you're not at that point where you're ready to change. But then I suppose there is so potentially if people are working less, people have more time, they're around more. There can potentially be more space to kind of go, oh, hang on a minute, Dave, you're taking this a bit far now, like, are you all right? Like, or, you know, there are more possibilities for perhaps intervention or help, and people ideally, I mean, I'm thinking about this utopian, but like have less stress so they have more time.
More time for self-reflection, more time for
and helping others, and just, you know,
spending time with family,
keeping an eye on each other, and in a healthy way, not in a
exactly. Seeing friends, seeing family, that sort of stuff. That can definitely change the way someone thinks and feels. It might give more people time to notice if things are going wrong as well. If everyone's got the same issue, people might more likely to say, well, where's all your money gone? I want the same money as you. The same amount, you know what I mean? So there might be that aspect as well. But I think, like I say, I think the same as any addiction. I think unless someone really wants to change, they won't change. And it's if that influx of cash, or whether that constant flow of cash is going to change the way that they gamble. I think a lot of people, if they're already that way inclined, I don't think it'll change a great deal. I think, to be fair, but the same could be said as well with the less time and the same more time off. It gives people more time to gamble. And I know if I worked a 4-day week, I would drink more on those 3 days off. I might not necessarily get really, really drunk every day, but I would definitely consume more alcohol in general because I've got that extra day.
Yeah, but it's like, what do you do on holiday?
Exactly.
You drink.
Yeah, exactly. You drink. It's the British way, isn't it? You find cheapest pint and you go there.
It's like, well, I've done cultural stuff. I've done beach. Now it's drink. I might have had some drinks while I was doing that, but you know, I'm on holiday.
Exactly, I'm on holiday. Exactly, what else am I going to do? Yeah, it's exactly the same. And I think, I know for a fact, like I say, if I had the extra day, I'd consume more alcohol. I'd say it's not a guarantee that I get lathered every day I'm off.
Yeah.
But I would consume more. And I think
it's because it would be one less day where you didn't have to wake up early and I don't have to worry about getting up tomorrow, so I can drink if I want to.
Exactly, and I think it'd be very similar with gambling as well. For the people that have got all that extra time, I think if people do choose to have that extra day off and they are that way inclined to have a gamble, they're more likely to gamble more.
Yeah, and then you could also kind of go, well, okay, I'm spending, all right, I'm gambling too much of my basic income away, but I can just get a job. I'll just do a job for a bit and then I'll pay that off, and then I can see easy ways into it still.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so that's me done on my questions, so I'm going to throw it over to you. So first of all, do the where people can find you. So if you want to give all the socials out, and then I'll do a hand over to you. So I'll let you do the socials first.
Yeah, so you can find us on Twitter at Leeds CGS, on Facebook, Leeds Community Gambling Service. or Instagram, Leeds Community Gambling Service, but it's all one word. Something we haven't really spoken about is that we also offer support for affected others as well. So it's anyone who's been affected by gambling, not just the gambler themselves. So if it's a friend or a family member, a parent, something like that, if it's one of your children, you can come for some support too. And it's exactly the same referral process into our service. So if you go to our website, so it's gamcare.org/UK, and if you just Google GamCare Yorkshire and Humber, it'll come straight up with our page, and there's a referral form there. Or you can give us a call on 0113 388 6466. Yeah, there's lots of good stuff on the website in general. There's lots of different recovery toolkit, understanding your gambling, all that sort of stuff. So even if you want to have a quick browse on there, go and have a look.
Thank you again to George for being my guest. You can follow Leeds Community Gambling Service on Twitter at Leeds CGS, that's Charlie Golf Sierra, on Facebook Leeds Community Gambling Service, or Instagram Leeds Community Gambling Service. And you can find out more about GamCare by going to www.gamcare.org.uk. Thanks as always to all my guests, and thanks to you, Leeds, for being my subject. Right, quick check-in. How are you? Exhausted? Feeling a bit bruised by all the horror? Firstly, don't look at the news. Turn off notifications on your phone. Clear all the news from your tabs. Turn it over when it comes on. Mute stories on social media. If you're tempted to click on a link that they want you to click on, click to get rid of it instead. Remember, the news doesn't tell you what to think. It does tell you what to think about. Set your own agenda. Follow just the stories that you are interested in. Own your algorithm. Train it like the mangy cur that it is. Next year, you're going to have 2 general elections either side of the Atlantic, and the news is going to be horrendous. The campaigns will be disgusting. The news will behave in an even more appalling way than we've ever seen so far. So, brace, brace, brace. Maybe you can feel it. We've passed a threshold now, and that's going to become even more apparent to even more people next year. It's like a veil slowly lifting. Things are going to get really crazy, like it's crazy now, but we're only really just starting to come up on climate change, so we're going to feel its effect more directly on our lives now. Yeah, it's awful, and what we're seeing already is just the higher pressure points buckling under the strain. We've gone from hairline cracks to fractures to full-on chunks falling off now, and those chunks will only get bigger. Some of those chunks you will be standing on when they give way. Others will smash you in the face as they fall down. But hey, don't think about it. Forget about it. Have a cup of tea and a biscuit. Things are hard and bad and getting harder and worse, and it will all get harder still. Get ready. Fortify. Grab a hug if you need one, and you probably do really need one. Remember that our neighbours are our neighbours and are not any dehumanizing categories and labels that power and media tell us that they might be. It's not okay for us to hate each other. If you're in Leeds or from Leeds, if you are Leeds, then please come on the show. Yes, I am speaking to you. I still need to find 896 loiners to interview, so being a guest is the greatest help. You will enjoy it. 100% satisfaction, as far as I know, so far. Also, I condemn the war, this one, the last one, the next one, and the nuclear one we're going to have if we don't knock off this behaviour as soon as possible. Remember to like, share, follow, and subscribe to Working Hours, and please consider supporting Working Hours financially with either a regular or a one-off donation of any amount. You can email Working Hours at workinghourspod@western-studios.com. Okay, that's me. Work for peace and plan with kindness. Cheers, ears. Take care out there and be kind to each other, Leeds. Working Hours is produced, recorded, edited and published by Simon Treen for Western Studios Leeds Limited. The music was The Bees from Chopin's Etudes, which is in the public domain and was taken from museopen.org. Follow Western Studios Leeds on Facebook at facebook.com/western_studios_Leeds and on LinkedIn, linkedin.com/company/western-studios. Western Studios Leeds will help you realise your podcast for only £25 for an hour of podcast work. Need podcast production, recording, editing, or any podcast admin doing? Need it all doing? Do you want or need a podcast host or co-host for your podcast project? Then get in touch with Western Studios Leeds Limited. Email makemypodcast@western-studios.com to get your podcast made. I am available to third sector organisations, small to medium-sized businesses and individuals who want to make podcasts or create other digital audio content. Want to make some fundraising case studies? Want to show off your expertise in your field? Want some help creating your show and format, or just some support learning to podcast and getting going? Whatever your podcast needs, get in touch with Western Studios Leeds. Go to western-studios.com and use the contact page to drop me a message about either working hours or about your own podcast project.